Hello, today I'm going to show you how to configure the development environment to reduce memory usage when working with Magic XPI 4.0. For development machines, you don't really need the full grid and space capabilities for clustering and redundancy. Here's how you set the configurations to reduce the GigaSpaces infrastructure's footprint on the development machine. In your Magic XPI installation, open the GigaSpaces folder followed by the bin folder. In the bin folder, look for the Magic XPI GS agent batch file. This script is responsible for starting the GigaSpaces agent, and the OS service that you'll be starting later also calls this batch file. Let's open the file now. In the Magic XPI GS agent batch file, we can see the memory allocation for the various GigaSpaces entities: the GSA, the GSC, the GSM, and the LUS. On development machines, the GSA, the GSM, and the LUS don't usually do too much work, so we can change their memory settings to 32 megabytes. The GSC is a container that holds all the objects and the entities, and therefore does a bit more work. So we'll give the GSC more memory than the other entities, but not as much as the current default value of 512 megabytes. We'll give it 64 megabytes. This is enough for a development machine. Now, let's look at the settings for when we start the GSA. Here you can see the command line for starting the GSA. You can see that we're starting the GSA with two containers, or GSCs, one global GSM, one global LUS, and one MG deploy, which is our deployment script. Two containers are too much for a development machine. There is no need for redundancy because it's not a production machine, so it's enough to have only a single container. However, if you do decide to run two containers for redundancy reasons, you'll have to increase the GSC memory to at least 256 megabytes because the synchronization between the partitions has an overhead. So to recap, in the Magic XPI GS agent batch file we change the memory allocation first, and then we change the number of containers that we will start with to a single container. Now we can save the batch file. Next, I'm going to show you how to make changes to the deployment of the space to account for some of the changes we've just made. The default deployment of the space is more than a single container. Actually, it needs at least two containers. To ensure a successful deployment, we need to adjust the deployment settings to work with a single GigaSpaces container. These changes are made in the installation folder's config folder. Here we have a file called magicxpi sla.xml. This file contains the deployment configuration settings. Let's open the file now. This file defines the partitioning strategy of the space that we're going to deploy, the number of instances of the space, and the number of backups. In the default configuration, there are two space partitions and one backup each, meaning that we have 4 space partitions in total. Because we changed the Magic XPI GS agent batch file configuration to a single container previously, as you can see here, we need to adjust the Magic XPI sla.xml to work with a single container. To do this, we'll reduce the number of instances to 1 because we only need a single space partition. And we don't need a backup because this isn't a production machine, so we'll enter 0 here. This configuration means that we have a single space partition that will run on a single container. So let's save those files and restart the service. Look for Magic XPI GSA, stop the service and wait for all the Java processes to stop. In the meantime, let's open the GigaSpaces UI to see the difference from the standard settings. We see that there are no entities at the moment because the service is currently stopped. So now, let's start the service again. Back in the GigaSpaces UI, we should see all the various GigaSpaces entities starting to work and connecting to each other. In the Host tab, we can see here the configuration that we set in the GSA startup. We see that we have only a single container, we have the GSA that starts everything, we have the GSM, and we have the LUS. Now let's go to the Deployed Processing Units tab, which is responsible for the deployment. We can see here that we have only a single partition and no backup. And here we see the deployment status is intact, which means that the space was deployed properly. Back in the Host tab, we can also see the memory allocation details of the various entities. These configuration values significantly reduce the GigaSpaces infrastructure's footprint on the machine. Today we've seen how to reduce the GigaSpaces infrastructure's memory usage footprint. I hope you'll join me again soon for some more magic.